Mike had boundless energy. You almost felt like you were being pulled along with the energy that he had.
I'll tell you a little about him. I'm smiling because I can say that knowing him always brought a smile to my face.
In the midst of difficulty, you should or can find opportunity, and he always did that.
And when he walked in the treatment room, like the room lights up.
I think he was just really compassionate, and he just really liked people.
I found him to be truly interested in whatever you're interested in.
He was an engaging person, very warm, deeply dedicated to children and their families.
Children's Hospital was his family. It was just as important, I think, as the family we had here at the home. He was there probably more than he was home, but he loved it. And anytime anyone asked him to look at a job somewhere else, he really wasn't interested.
Dr. Shannon joined the staff at Children's Hospital in 1983. During his 15-year tenure, he served as chief of both the emergency medicine and pharmacology departments. Always modest about his accomplishments, he was the first African-American division chief at Children's and the first African-American to be named full professor of pediatrics at Harvard Medical School.
People gravitated to him. He had a kind of charisma, but I think it was one of the reasons that he was able to move up the ladder. I mean, this is Harvard. Machiavelli would have lasted about a day and a half at Harvard.
Michael had a tremendous sense of advocacy for children and their environmental health. So we were working on several lead poisoning projects. Michael had given testimony about lead poisoning and how we should be doing better.
He didn't shy away, ultimately, from the politics of lead poisoning, which, as you can well imagine, between landlords and lead companies and the whole problem of environmental toxicology, Mike eventually jumped into with both feet.
From ABC News headquarters,
Michael became preeminent, and not only nationally but internationally, in toxicology.
We have children who come to the emergency department on a regular basis because
he assumed leadership positions in two of our national organizations, the American College of Medical Toxicology and the American Academy of Clinical Toxicology.
He had a great sense of the needs of people who were coming up the ladder, so that he was willing to mentor them.
So I think he actually really loved learning. He would always tell us in rounds to exercise our memory, so to certainly go over generic names of drugs, and then the actual trade names or side effects, clinical manifestations.
His advocacy for children, his deliberateness as a physician, his thoughtful approach to patients and their families, that influenced the next generation of physicians and leaders in clinical toxicology.
He's probably one of the most respectful individuals that we've all ever met. And I had the great opportunity to work with him and to experience that aspect of Dr. Shannon. Very compassionate and very generous with his time.
So I think one of the interesting things about working in the emergency department with Michael was how calm he always was. He was always very nicely dressed with a dress shirt on, usually a bow tie with his white coat on, and he would be standing there in the middle of the ER, very poised, probably in some sort of ballet type position, and he would just look left and look right. Oftentimes with a purple popsicle in his hand, he would be eating his popsicle, looking left and right, and everything was calm, and he always had a good pulse or a sense of what was going on.
Love the hair. Do you do her hair?
Not too much, because she screams and screams.
From childhood, I never wanted to be anything but a doctor. I was sure I was going to be a doctor. I went through high school and told everyone I was going to be a doctor, and then I went to college and discovered modern dance. And that just threw a wrench in things.
He started dancing when he was at Wash U. He knew that that's where all the girls were. You know, it was fun. You could meet girls, and there weren't that many guys in the classes. He was a pretty smart guy.
If I wasn't taking the requisite pre-med classes, I was in a dance studio.
It turned into probably one of the biggest passions of his life.
He was one of those dancers that you immediately recognize as being complete, in that they understand they're artists, but they also understand that there's a lot of work involved. And so he was very committed to improving his technical skills.
I was thinking about doing this new production at the time of the Urban Nutcracker, and I was saying, I need a Drosselmeyer. And I said, who could I get to do that? And I said, Michael Shannon.
8 years ago, choreographer Tony Williams coaxed Michael to join the cast of the Urban Nutcracker to perform the pivotal role of Drosselmeyer.
He could move very gracefully, and he would fill out phrases with his head and shoulders and arms, and so it was really a nice combination of strength and grace.
The way Tony's choreographed it, this Drosselmeyer is in every segment of the show. It's almost like a thread that keeps all of the pieces together and keeps the magic throughout it.
No matter what his professional responsibilities, Michael returned to the Urban Nutcracker each holiday season.
There's a great story about my father. He'd never been to a modern dance concert. He'd never been to any dance concert. He was, you know, a working class Italian guy, and we'd been married for about 6 months, and Michael was in the show, and Dad came, and he ran into his urologist during intermission, and his urologist said, Mr. Bender, what are you doing here? And he said, oh, that's my son-in-law over there in the dress. And, you know, that said it all, because he was so proud that that was his son-in-law that was not only dancing, but had a dress on.
It, you know, was amazing. At the memorial on that Saturday at the church, a lot of dancers were there, and you know, they were all affected by him. So he really was in two worlds. And then when I saw all of the MDs get up to talk, and you know, and that was a whole other. It's like, wow, that's really another world. And it's amazing that he, you know, could shift back and forth, and you know, that saying, you know, he'll always be known as the dancing doctor.
My uncle, who's 90 years old, came to the funeral, and he couldn't believe. He says, I've known him for 25 years. I had no idea he did all of those things. And, you know, Michael would sleep maybe 6 hours a night. And I'd say, you need to sleep more. And he's like, no, I'm fine, I'm fine. And now, you know, he accomplished so much. And he never wasted time on things he didn't want to do.
He was well-loved by his peers, professionally, by those in public health, by families, and certainly by the children who knew him.
He felt that children were the most important patients, and that they should have all of the research in their favor. And so he decided to go into pharmacology and start this beautiful department that unfortunately hasn't gotten off the ground. And that was his next 20 years. He felt he was going to be devoted to pediatric pharmacology.
If there's a heaven, he's up there. And he's sitting right at the right hand of the big guy up there. You know? But that's him, you know.